Hey guys, so for this week, we are going to be doing a couple of different things. First, I'm only going to do one video, but you're more than welcome to watch it, speed it up, slow it down, fast forward through things, that's fine. And for the assignment, we are going to be using GoFormative so that you can actually use your Chromebook and write on it. And it's okay for you to write and show work on GoFormative. You can use your technology to write, or if you'd like, you can write on paper and then just upload a photo. So there's going to be a couple of different things this week, but all exciting new technology things. Okay, so this week we are going to take some things we already know and add to them. So we have already talked about vertex form, but we're going to be using vertex form in a different way. This week's going to be a lot of plugging in and solving. So you are going to have to show work this week. You will not be able to get credit if you don't show any work. So please make sure you're showing some work. So we're also going to be using Desmos, and that's going to be super helpful for you as well. All right. So I'm going to do a couple of examples and work through some problems to help you understand how you would work through the problem. So here it gives me the formula for vertex form. Remember, it's y equals a x minus h squared plus k. But everything has a purpose. So back here, this k, remember that's our vertical shift. Okay. This h right here, that is our horizontal shift. Okay, and our a right here, that is whether our graph is going to stretch or compress. So in other words, whether it's going to get more narrow or wider. The x and the y are just the x and the y from a point. And so every single part is important. Also with vertex form, which we learned before we left for break, is if you take the h and you take the k, which remember is our horizontal shift, and our vertical shift, that will actually give you your vertex. All right, so we're going to go through the problem and we're going to think about what we could do with each part. So it says a quadratic function has a vertex of -2, 4 and has been vertically stretched by 3. Write the equation that represents this function. Well, I've labeled the different parts so that I can see what each part is, right? So I'm going to start with my vertex. Well, if I have -2, 4, that means I have my h and I have my k because this point is my vertex. If it was not my vertex, it would not be my h and my k. But because it is specifically my vertex, it is definitely my h value and my k value. The other thing that we have is that it has been vertically stretched by a factor of 3. And so that 3 is going to be this a value right there. So when we fill in the equation with the parts that we know, we have y equals, we know that our a value is 3, so we're going to put a 3 in the front. We're going to keep everything else, the format the same, so parentheses, and then we're going to put x minus, and then our h value is actually -2. And so right here, this negative and this negative is going to become a plus. And so we'll rewrite it here in just a moment. Squared plus, and our k value is our 4. So we would put 4. So if we rewrite it, it would end up being y equals 3 parentheses x plus 2 squared plus 4. And so that's how we would fill it in using the information that we knew. Again, our vertex is going to be HK, And then any stretch or compress, remember, is our a value. So you may want to make sure you write these on the notes that I posted as well. For the next one, we're still going to use vertex form, and again, we still have the same things. Remember, this is going to be our vertical shift. Our H is going to be our horizontal shift. Our A is our stretch or compress. And then our X and our Y values, remember, comes from a point X, Y. So here it says a quadratic function has a vertex of 3, -1. Remember, since it's our vertex, it's our H and our K, and passes through the point 1, 4. And so our point would be 1, 4. Now remember, that's our X and our Y value. And so it wants us to take that information and plug it in. So I'm going to take this information, I'm going to plug it into our equation. So my Y, in this case, is 4. Our A would stay in the front. We don't have an A value. Parentheses, our X would be 1 minus our H value, which is 3 squared, plus our K value, which is a -1. And so right here, that would end up being just -1. So here we've got 4 equals A 1 minus 3 squared, and then it would be -1. Now if they needed us to simplify it, we could simplify these parts. So 1 minus 3 would be -2, and -2 squared would be 4. So we would have 4 equals 4a minus 1. And if we wanted it to equal 0, we would subtract 4 on both sides. Oh, actually, if we wanted to find out what our a value was, we could solve it. So I would box this and draw my line. Remember, this is where you do inverse operations. And so we would add 1 on both sides. So this would be a 5. And we've got 4a here. And our last step would be dividing by 4 on both sides. So a would be 5/4. And so once you've plugged all of that in, you'll be able to find your a value. You just have to plug it in the correct place and then solve. The next part would be how to take vertex form and change it into standard form. Standard form looks like this, where it's y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. We don't normally use standard form for a whole lot unless we're doing quadratic formula, or we're just typing it in to get a graph, or if we're going to do factoring. Normally we try to use vertex form because it tells us the shifts. Whoops. And so if it tells us the shifts, it's much easier for us to understand what it's asking us to do. So now we're going to take vertex form and we're going to turn it into standard form. And so again, you're just going to almost do the same steps we did just a minute ago to solve. So we're going to take this equation here, and I'm going to rewrite it just so it's a little bit bigger. Y equals negative x minus 3 squared plus 5. So we're going to have to take some things. We are going to start here, and we are going to square it. But remember, when something is squared, that really just means write the same thing twice and then multiply. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to take the squared, and so I'm going to rewrite it. I'm going to do over here on the side, we're going to do x minus 3 times x minus 3. And so here's where we're going to do double distribution. Remember, x times x is x squared. x times negative 3 is negative 3x. And then remember we do the bottom, negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. And so here we're going to combine like terms. So we should get x squared minus 6x's plus 9. Now, if you don't remember how to do double distribution, remember you can also do the box method. And you can write x minus 3 and x minus 3. And remember, x times x is x squared. X times negative 3 is negative 3x. X times negative 3 is negative 3x. And negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. And so you would get the same thing, x squared minus 6x, because remember you add those. Remember there's a plus sign in the middle. And then plus 9. So both of these will get you the same thing, but I am going to erase the box method just to have more space to finish out my work. Okay, so here I'm going to rewrite it. I'm going to write y equals, I still have that negative from before. Now I'm going to fill in my x squared minus 6x plus 9, and then my plus 5. So before I can continue, the only part I've done is this squaring. I haven't done anything with this negative, and I haven't done anything with this plus 5. So now is when I have to do it. I'm going to take that negative in front. Remember, it's kind of like being a negative 1. And you distribute it to all the terms in the parentheses. So it's just going to change the sign of each term. So y equals, this is now going to be a negative x squared. Negative times a negative here would be a positive 6x. And then a negative times that positive 9 would be a negative 9. And don't forget, you still have this plus 5. So the very last step would be to combine any last terms that we thought would go together. And so right here in the back, you're going to see we have two constants. So those constants will go together because they both don't have an x. So at the end, you would get y equals negative x squared plus 6x. And then negative 9 plus 5, this right here, would be minus 4. And so that would be your equation in standard form. It may be helpful to re-watch this video and kind of work through the problem as I'm working through it to make sure that you are doing it correctly, because this is a new topic, taking vertex form to standard form. Remember, you're going to start with the squared, then do the negative, and then combine the last term with anything else that is a constant. All right, for this last section, this is going to have you use Desmos. We're going to use Desmos for this section. If you do not have Desmos or you don't have Wi-Fi, you can always close. You can sign all the way out of your computer and then enter Desmos test mode. And you can use that without the internet. Okay, so those are things you need to know about that. So for the last one, we're going to use the regression, but we're going to use the Desmos directions. And if you click on Desmos directions right here, it'll take you to it in the notes, not in my video. You can't click here in my video. But I did upload notes to follow, so if you click Desmos directions, it'll take you there. And the Desmos directions will look like this. And we're going to follow them together on this next slide. The best part about this is I actually could embed a browser, so that'll be fun. I'm learning all kinds of new technology. All right. So here it says go to desmos.com or log out of your Chromebook to use Desmos test mode. And so I've already gotten here to desmos.com. And so you should get to where it looks like this. And I'm going to follow it step by step. And I'm going to actually go below this part right here. So step 2 then says hit the plus. And so over here I'm going to hit the little plus sign on my Desmos. Okay, and then it says enter, we're going to add a table. So I'm going to click table and I'm going to enter some values. Now the values I'm going to enter are going to be right over here. I'm just going to copy those values over there. So on my Desmos screen, I can hit -2 and then enter, -1, enter, 0, enter, 1, enter, 2, enter. Oh, we don't need 3. And then over here, we're going to input 4, and then 1, and then 0, 1, and 4. And as you can see, it's graphing the dots over here on the side, right over here, if you look. Oops. Right there, it's graphing it for us. All right, now it says, I'm going to erase my lines where it showed you the graph. Okay, so now if I follow the directions, it says go to the next line in Desmos. Okay, so that means from here, we're going to click. If you press enter, it's just going to give you more table values, but you can click down here on 2. You see how it says 2 over here? So that you can start typing here. Now it says to type in this. Okay, and so I'm going to use my keypad down here in order to type it in. And so we're going to type Y, 1, and it'll put a sub 1 for you. And then it says approximately, and let me see if I can find there we go, approximately, and then it says AX, and then 1, and then squared, and then plus, go back to my letters, B, X, 1, plus C. And if you look, it's going to give you your A value, hold on one second, your A value, your B value, and your C value. And so that's how you would fill out standard form. Because remember, standard form is AX squared plus BX plus C. And the values it just gave you were the A, the B, and the C. And so when you rewrite your equation, you would write Y equals, since A is 1, you would just put 1, X squared. Now remember, you don't have to put a 1, you could just put X squared. B, since B is 0, you're going to put nothing because 0 times an X would be 0 and you wouldn't need that. C is also 0, so you would put nothing. And this is your equation. And if you look, this is the quadratic parent function. So it is Y equals X squared. So you can always put in a table and then follow these directions in order to find your equation. Now remember, the directions are either going to be in the notes that I have, and it'll tell you to click the Desmos directions, but I also did upload the Desmos directions straight into Google Classroom. And so if you just go to Google Classroom and follow these directions, you will be just fine for this problem. Please let me know if you have any questions or concerns, and I will have a couple of Zoom tutorials this week to help you out because this is new stuff. Happy learning!